probably a whole nother presentation and idea and topic, which is how to use the least amount of resources, your time, money, energy, to get the most out of video. I'd love to tell you more about that. And again, that would be a 45-minute presentation that maybe I'll turn into a course later. All right, breaking down content, stacking, repurposing, or as we call it, cascading content framework. And this is introducing our super custom content stack that enhances your podcast reach and impact. Again, I promise at the end, I'll show you some real world examples and numbers of how I use this to help my podcast. This framework is inspired by the podcast host and Gary Vee, which, yes, podcast host Cullen, they did an article on this, and it has been successfully tested and is now being rolled out for a few of our lucky clients. We just had a client sign on that wants to do a large amount of this, which is pretty cool. And all three of these frameworks are very similar. You can have it as I guess this one over here is as a funnel, and I'll go into the details of this. Or you could have it as a waterfall, or you could do it as a virtuous cycle where they all come in. And I'll go into details and it'll be blown up in a second. All right, so the three things that they have in common is that high value, not just high quality, and you're giving value to your listener and user, whatever it is, watcher, and you're giving people something that they can't live without, or you're solving a problem, or you're answering a question. That's high value. High volume, perfectionism is dead. Getting it 80% right 100% of the time for as long as possible, consistently, which leads to consistency, is the key. Humans' algorithms love when you do things consistent, just like compound interest in health and fitness. With publishing podcasts is to publish consistently, whether it's the same time and the same day or every week. If you say you're going to do that, keep doing that. That's how you grow. It's the same with using video and using it as a marketing tool. But for brevity and simplicity, I'll focus on the core components and tenets of all three. And this is the one I like to use the best as a funnel. So you start with the podcast. The podcast is obviously video and audio. You spin that off in the short video content, all the social media platforms there. You can also spin it to infographics and quotes, which can be used in a lot of places. I use my quotes actually I use them on my blog posts, and I use Strava, which is a fitness app. If you don't do any fitness stuff, you probably don't know about Strava, but Strava is like a social fitness app that is very popular, and actually you can do posts on there. So I use a lot of my infographics and quotes in there. So it's not just an Instagram or a Facebook post. I use it in a lot of places, and it gets the point across of something that I talked about in the podcast, and then people go, oh, what's that? They then click the link in bio. Obviously blogs, website, newsletter, YouTube, where then you could spin it off into YouTube clips, which are different than short videos. And a clip is like a 5 to 10 minute segment of the episode. So if you have a 40-minute episode, I then would get some key moments, and rather than trying to shove them into that 30-second TikTok-y like bam, I then let it breathe a little bit more. I don't do any heavy editing, but I then can title it and focus that 5 minutes on a specific idea that we had, or a back and forth question answer that we had in the podcast very well, and someone gets the value off of that piece of content instead of waiting for them to get to 30 minutes, which most people, you look at that trend of listening, you always get that drop off and that small little drop off at the end. The small bits at the end of people that watched. So if your best part is in the middle, then you might as well make that its own piece of content. All right, this is basically how it looks from, again, that funnel that I showed you. And this is the short video, and I'll play this. Can her training for the 5K and 10K also cross over to her doing a 50K ultra marathon?
So let's just draw a middle line and say on your end.
But this is how it looks when we actually
between the 5 and the 10K, it's 90% aerobic and 10% anaerobic.